Shalom. This is Hadassah Saiwan returning with the book of Revelation, chapter 19. Is actually an extension of chapter 19. We've concluded chapter 19, parts 1 and 2, and now we're looking at the war in Har Magadan according to the book of Yawaal, which is the book of Yawaal, which is the book of Joel chapter 3. Okay, so let's get started with this chapter. We have to understand that there will be two final wars before all the Satans are vanquished and all their evil earthly agents are also destroyed. So let us remember the wars that are coming. There will be a war called the War of Har Magadan or Armageddon, which will occur when HaMashayach returns as our king to establish his worship on the earth, his righteousness on the earth. So he's going to come with his saints, and at that point of time, Allah Hayam is going to draw the kings of the earth. This is the beast empire, along with the three Satans and the anti-Messiah and all the different ones that will join up with them, the ones that are full of sores and the worshippers of these beasts. They're full of sores and they're oozing and full of pus and smelly. They're all going to join together to form this multitude of multitudes coming on horses in our land to fight against HaMashayach and his people, to fight against us. But they're drawn there by Allah Hayam because he's getting ready to destroy them. Now, we don't get the fullness of this war in chapter 19. So we have to go to other prophecies to see what this war is going to look like. So therefore, we're going to do some extensions here because chapter 19, part 3 will deal with the prophet Yawaal, who is Joel, what he says about the war. And then we're going to look at Zechariah. And Zechariah, because it's a big chapter, it's going to take 2 parts. So that's going to be parts 4 and 5. And then finally, we're going to do a beautiful study in part 6. I'm not going to call the title yet because I have not truly concluded that that's the title that I'm going to go with. But we have the next 4 parts to this study that will deal with the war in Har Magadan. We cannot go through chapter 19 and just kind of glaze over it and that's it. No, absolutely not. Because this is the moment of moments that we have been waiting for our entire life. The return of our King, us returning to our land. And governance on the earth is returned to us. And to, of course, to Allah Hayam, HaMashayach. True worship restored, righteousness restored, holiness restored. Can we just kind of glance through chapter 19? No, we cannot. So I'm not really surprised that this chapter has expanded to have 6 parts. No, I have not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And chapter 20 is going to be another big chapter too. Because these are all dealing with the sweet things that we're longing for. We've been waiting for all our life to be restored. Are you just going to kind of just read the chapter and say this, and that, and let it be finished? No. We're going to pull all the prophecies together and we're going to paint this beautiful picture of the second coming of our King, Malakana. All right? So this war that we're dealing with now, and we've discussed this is the war of Har Magadan. These two wars will be coming against us in our land, but we will have Malakana, our king, with us. Therefore, there will not be much in the way of fighting going on. We're not really going to raise up a sword. We're just riding with him because he wants us to see the defeat of our enemies. All right? He is the one who is going to fight on our behalf. Our fighting is finished, has been completed. The southern kingdom, their war, their fighting, our fighting has been finished now for a while. We're just waiting to be regathered. The northern kingdom, their fight, their war finished at seal number 6. And they too are not going to be fighting. This now is the war with HaMashayach and with Yahweh. HaMashayach is going to take care of these 3 Satans and their minions. And Allah Hayam, he already took care of the whore of Babylon and her Satan. And he's going to take care of the last Satan, which is going to come at the end of the 1,000-year reign of HaMashayach. And that's the second and last war that this earth will ever see. And it's called the Gog and Magog War. And Gadriel, who is locked away, who will be locked away in the bottomless pit and a seal set upon him, he will be the one that will be released in Revelation chapter 20. And he's going to pull the multitudes together again to war against us and our king, Malakana. After that war, and Allah Hayam destroys him and his armies, Abiyana, our father, Allah Hayam, Yahweh, he is the one that's going to deal with Gadriel and his armies, the Gog and Magog war. So we're not going to raise up arms. We're just going to be there to witness the destruction of our enemies with our own 2 eyes. All right, let's go on. Therefore, there will not be much in the way of fighting going on. We know that. We know that. We're not coming with a sword. HaMashayach is coming with a sword in his mouth. That's his power, his glorified word. The power in his spoken word. In this first war, HaMashayach will destroy the 3 Satans that will come out of the beast empire, the false prophet, and the dragon, which we know will be the image of the beast. And the image of that beast, speaking of the beast empire. The dragon cannot be Satan itself, as Satan will not possess Satan. Therefore, the dragon will be the image of the beast possessed by a Satan. And it is not mentioned anymore after this event. So, after the evil, unclean spirit comes out of the mouth of the dragon, which we know is the image of the beast empire, there's no more talk about it. So don't get it confused with the dragon, which came after the woman that birthed the man-child. That was a Satan. And also an entity. A Satan that possessed an entity. We looked at that and we knew that that was King Herod, which was a part of the Roman Empire. He was a part of the Roman Empire. So don't get confused by the wordings, by the words, wordings, by the words. Don't get confused. We have to realize who the players are. And once we have it straight in our minds, who the players are, then we cannot go astray and be confused. And that's why I did a study called The Beast of the Book of Revelation. I did an extensive study so that you can see who these beasts are. along with their Satan, the entities and the Satans. Okay. So the dragon is the image of the beast empire. The the Satan that comes out of that image, because the Satan caused this image to speak. And those who would not worship the image of the beast empire were destroyed. Remember that. All right. So we hear nothing more about the statue because it was made. It was a statue that was possessed. Listen, these unclean spirits, these devils, they can possess anything, animate and inanimate, animate and inanimate. All right? They can possess anything. So that's who the dragon or what the dragon will be. All right? Remember that it will be a statue that will be possessed to be able to speak only because of the Satan that will possess it. So let's go back to that verse in verse 13 and 14 of Revelation chapter 19. Okay? And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So we know the dragon is the image of the beast empire. The beast here is the beast empire. And here is the false prophet who we know as the anti-Messiah. They're one and the same, okay? Verse 14, for they are the spirits of devils, meaning Satans, all right, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to that great battle of Allah Shaddai. So they are gathered. These 3 Satans now are bringing together the kings of the earth along with their armies, because that's who the kings of the earth represent, the beast empire, which includes the armies. And by the way, this is the last empire, number 8. All right, the one that the whore rode upon, and the same one that killed the whore. All right. So now they're trying to gather up all their worshippers to come to war against HaMashayach and his people in our land. And Allah is drawing them there. He will draw them there. All right. So let's look at Yawaal chapter 3. This is the book of Joel chapter 3, starting from verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Yahweh and Yerushalayim. Now we pause here, because what these prophets like to do, and I shouldn't even say the prophets, this is what Al-Hayam speaks through his prophets. This is all Al-Hayam. All right? This is all him. Sometimes these prophets don't even know what they're saying, because they're speaking under the unction, under the power of Ruach HaKadosh, Ruach of Allah, the spirit of Allah. So they don't necessarily know what it is that they're saying. They have to pray to him to give them revelation. And because this is an end time prophecy, what does he tell to his prophets? Seal up the books, because the time is not here. It is not for you to know. He gives them a little insight, but because the events of the end times is so far removed from them, they will not understand what is coming. Sometimes he gives them like visions where they can see, and yet sometimes they still can't understand what they're saying. He did it with Masha. He did it with Abraham. He showed them the end times. Did it with Dana Yaal. Dana Yaal could not understand a lot of it, a lot of the prophecies, because it was said at a time that was so far removed from him, it was impossible for him to understand what the end times will look like. But we can understand what the end times will look like because we're living in the end times, naturally. So, what Allah Hayam is what I should have said. What he likes to do is set the stage to give us a little bit of a backdrop to show us why the prophecy is given and for what purpose. All right? So this is Allah Hayam giving us a little peek at this prophecy. All right? To understand what is meant by in those days and in that time, we have to go back to Yawaal chapter 2, where it is speaking about the regathering of the northern kingdom. We went through this in, let me see if I can remember, Revelation chapter 12, I believe. Yes, which is the extension, the second exodus of the northern kingdom, according to the book of Revelation. So we did an extent, we included Yawaal chapter 2. Keep wanting to say Yawabal. Yawabal is Jubilee. It is Yawaal, the book of Joel. We touched on that to show you that this has to do with the regathering of the northern kingdom. Okay? So at the ending of this chapter, meaning chapter 2 of Yawaal, the prophet speaks about the day of Yahweh, which is about judgment. So anytime you see those words, the day of Yahweh, is judgment. He's concluding his judgment. All right? The judgment for either the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom, or the Gentiles on the earth. In this case, the judgment will be set against the Gentile nations of the earth because the southern kingdom has already been regathered. They're the ones coming back with HaMashayach, and the northern kingdom, they're safely in their land. So the only inhabitants left on the earth that have not been judged and sifted completely will be the Gentile nations. And he left them for last because they have to go through all of his judgments. All of them. I know there are Gentiles out there, the church, what have you, teaching that the church will not see the wrath of Allah Hayam. They are setting themselves up to be greatly disappointed when they realize that they're speaking in error and they're leading others in this error because they don't see anything wrong with them. They have no concept of sin. Because if they did, they will not be thinking, I need to get out of here. They'll be thinking, I need to repent. I need to repent. Because they too have been deceived into thinking that all they need to do is to say a prayer and that is going to whitewash everything, past, present, and future. They can carry on as they're carrying on right now. They don't need to make any any changes, any adjustments. They just need to keep hoping and praying for rapture. All right? They don't need to do anything. That prayer has you sealed. You're good for the rapture. You're rapture ready once you say this prayer. That's what they're teaching out there. But that is a lie from the pit of hell. Because there's no such thing as a rapture. All right? There's no such thing as a rapture. And especially for the Gentiles? Come on. Really? So, what's going to happen? That's why a lot of these people on this earth, they're going to die from the mere shock, especially the ones that call themselves Christians. The ones that don't believe in anything in particular, they're going to come to a crossroad anyway in their life, either to worship the beast or worship Allah. If they still choose not to, by default, they're heading over to the beast camp. They're going to be treated like the worshippers of the beast by Allah by default. You got to make your mind up who you're going to serve. But a lot of these ones right now that call themselves Christians and waiting for a rapture, a lot of them are going to die from the shock of it all. Because in their hearts, they're not to be, they're going to be spared the torments that are coming. And when they realize that they're not going to be spared, then the next thing that's going to happen, a lot of them are going to commit suicide. Because they're not going to believe anymore. Because their whole life has been centered by the rapture. Getting out of here to go to heaven and play with harps all the day long. That's what they've been brainwashed to believe. This is a heavy deception that is on the Gentiles. All right? So this judgment that the earth is going to go through at this point of time in this study will be set against the Gentile nations. This judgment will be set against the Gentile nations of the earth. When HaMashayach will return, the captives, quote unquote, of the southern kingdom, because we know the captivity of Yahweh and Yarawashalam speaks of the southern kingdom. Yahweh is Judah, and Yarawashalam will be the half tribe of Lawai or Levi. All right? These captives will be none other than the remnant of those who were once slaves on the earth, but were regathered into third heaven until this event, when they will be returning to our land, Yashraal. We were captives, we were slaves, we were sold as slaves to the four corners of this earth. Not the same as the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom, they're concentrated mostly in Africa and northern Africa. And the northern areas like Syria, and those places. All right? There'll be a few scattered because of travel. Travel is being expanded now with airplanes, trains, and automobiles. People can travel far and wide, and yes, ships as well. So the northern kingdom are mostly concentrated in Africa. That's why I don't understand why our people, the southern kingdom, are running. They're running to Africa, and then what? Anyways. So we were brought again, the ones that are going to be brought again are when I shall bring again the captivity of Yahweh, and Yahweh is speaking of the southern kingdom. So he's setting the stage here, the backdrop, to give us an understanding who this prophecy is pointing towards. It's pointing towards the southern kingdom. It is clear that Yawaal, the prophet, was speaking of the southern kingdom because he mentions Yahweh and Yarawashalam, who are the tribes of the southern kingdom. This time of the return of the southern kingdom to the earth will be the time when they will arrive with HaMashayach. So that's the only time that we will be returned, right? He's speaking about the end times in those days, in that time. He's speaking about the end times when he returned those that were once captives, those that were once slaves. All right? We're the offspring of the slaves of Yahweh and Yarawashalam of the southern kingdom. Let's call it southern kingdom. We, the offspring, are still considered captives because we're not living in our land until we are returned. In fact, until we are regathered, we will remain captives. All right? Don't let them fool you in thinking that you were born in an island, so therefore that island is yours. They've sold us that lie to make us think that that's where we came from. Then they sold you another lie and tell you you come from Africa. All right? So there are people, they're either believing that they're from the islands originally, or they're from Africa originally. And it stops there. Our history stops there. So the return of the captives of the southern kingdom is speaking of this is the end times. And the only time that we are going to return will be with HaMashayach. It's the only time. So that's the event that this prophecy is pointing us towards. The return of the southern kingdom to the earth with HaMashayach. Let's look at verse 2. I will also gather all the nations, these are the Gentile nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Yehoshaphat, which is Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Yashraal, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Now, when he says plead there, he's not begging for anything. No, he is getting ready to bring judgment and destruction on these people. Why? He's telling you here why he is doing this. Why he is gathering these nations, these Gentile nations, to the valley of Yehoshaphat. And you know, some people will think that Yehoshaphat is another valley for another war. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is still the war of Har Magadan. And why he is doing this? For my heritage, Yashraal, for his people. Those that he has an inheritance for. Those who belong to him. Why? Because they scattered them among the nations, among the Gentiles. And then they parted our land. They took our land and gave it away. Because we cannot claim that we are of Yashraal, the country, the land, if the land is already occupied by another people that looks nothing like us. So that's why they've sold us this story that you were born in the islands, in the Caribbean. So therefore, you are from the Caribbean, you're a West Indian. Now, some people don't buy that. They dig a little deeper and they realize that their forefathers came from the slave trade that were picked up from Africa, along the coast of Africa. So then they spread the light even deeper to cover Africa, so that in case these ones wake up, in case they start questioning, but where were we from before, we can also sell them a second lie if they don't believe the first one. The second lie, oh, well, you were slaves, you were brought over from Africa. That's what is written down in the history books that they teach us in the elementary and high schools and even the universities. That's what they teach us. That we're from Africa, we came from Africa as slaves, and now we are planted in the islands, and now the island is yours because you have your own government, you have your own money, you have your own flag. But listen, even your own coat of arms, you have your own anthem, your own pledge. But when you look at all the things that they give us and say it belongs to you, guess what is attached to it? The same demonic people that had us enslaved in the first place. All their symbols, when you look at the flags, the symbols there point to their demonic gods. Points to them and their history, their people, their the old names, the I'm trying to find the right name, the old families. You know, they have the old families that have been causing certain events to take place on this earth. Do you know that? Do you know that there are old families from the dawn of time that have been manipulating the course of history on this earth? Of course, with the permission of Allah, because they can't do anything unless He says yes. But these are the wicked ones that have been manipulating us and teaching us a lot of lies. They're the ones who enslaved our people and brought them to an island and said, okay, now slavery is abolished. Slavery is abolished. You can stay on this island and live on it, but still pay tribute to the queen. You still have to pay tribute to the queen. You still have to consider her as your queen, even though you're independent. No, that doesn't make sense to me at all. And everything that is done in the government, even in the judicial system, comes from them. It comes from them. And they train up these people in the governments, in these islands, with their education to keep order amongst us, to keep us dumbed down and stupid. The educational system has been set up to keep us dumbed down. That's why the history books all tell the same lies. We came from Africa. We were the ones, we fled from our land, Yashraal, and we fled to Africa to get support from them because they look like us. And even our northern kingdom brethren were there, and they turned on us too. They turned on us too. Remember, we were always enemies anyway, since the division. So all these people walking around, well, I'm from the islands, I'm from the West Indies, I'm this, I'm that. No, you're not. Pull the wool off your eyes. Open your ears. They've set up everything to keep you dumbed down and ignorant of the truth. Dumbed down. It was a well-laid plan, a well-laid agenda to keep a people ignorant of their identity. A well-laid plan. And you're wondering why the Gentiles, the same ones, a lot of them that call themselves Christians, they're the offspring of the same people that pulled the wool over our eyes and took away our land. I don't care how much Jesus you cry out. I don't care how much mercy you beg for. You got to start going through some stuff for all the things that your forefathers have done to us. If we had to bear under the curses of our forefathers, you now need to bear under the curses that are coming to you as a result of the curses that we had to go through, the persecution that we had to go through at the hand of your forefathers. Ain't going to be sweet. It's not going to be easy. But if you submit yourself to Allah Hayam, then will you can be preserved and you will receive a portion of our inheritance. That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. All right? Ain't going to be any other way. No other way. All right? So they parted our land. So now Allah Hayam, he is seeking revenge. Vengeance is mine, saith Yahweh. Many have gone astray to think that the valley of Yehoshaphat is an actual place when in fact it is the prophetic description of a war that will take place in a valley, but not Yehoshaphat. Yehoshaphat means Yahweh has judged. And a valley is a low place as compared to a mountaintop or a hilltop. Allah Hayam Yahweh will draw these nations who we know as Gentiles or heathens to a valley where he will execute his judgment through his son HaMashayach. And why is Yahweh judging these nations? It was through them that his people, the 12 tribes of Yashrael, were scattered from their land, enslaved, persecuted, and even slaughtered like animals. And then these same nations divided up the land of Yashrael to be given to other nations. This is very evident today, even as the occupiers of our land currently are Gentiles from different nations. They're from the offspring of the Ashkenaz. They call themselves Ashkenazi. And they're the offspring of Ashkenaz, who is the offspring of Japheth. So they're not even from the offspring of Sham. They're not of Sham. All right? This gathering of nations is as the gathering of the nations in Revelation 19, when the three evil spirits like frogs will gather all the nations of the earth along with their kings to war against HaMashayach and his saints. So this gathering of the nations that we see here in Yawaal chapter 2 is the same as the gathering of the nations in Revelation chapter 19. Okay? Allah Hayam. Sorry, I don't think I've finished reading that. So when the three evil spirits like frogs gather all the nations of the earth along with their kings to war against HaMashayach and his kings, Allah Hayam is drawing these Gentile nations to destroy them in the same land where they destroyed his people over the generations. Now blood for blood in the land of Yashrael to exact vengeance on behalf of his people. So this is what he's doing. There was so much blood that was shed in our land by the hands of these people, whether they were the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Medes and Persians, what have you. The Assyrians, they all shed our blood in our land. So now Allah Hayam is flipping the tables. He's flipping it around and he's going to shed their blood in our land. Let's look at verse 3 of Yawaal chapter 3. And they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And that's what they did with our children. But we were warned. We were warned that if we continue to disobey the laws and statutes and judgments and commandments of Allah Hayam, that these things were going to come against us. They're called curses. This is evident of what happened to our forefathers every time they were enslaved. They used our sons to be like women and used them to be like prostitutes. Yes. And the females they sold for wine to get drunk. This meant that they traded instead of selling our people for money. Allah Hayam, he said, I'm going to sell you for nothing. No one's going to want to buy you because of the curses that are upon you, brought by your own hand, because you were disobedient to me. And so said, so done. All right, they treat the boy children like harlots, and they're selling the girls for wine. But it would not have stopped there to just merely sell our daughters for wine. The ideal way for these pagan heathens to get drunk is to drink the blood of our people, our children specifically, that they had sacrificed to their gods. That's what they were doing. They were sacrificing. Don't worry, it says sold a girl for wine. He's using imagery here, prophetic imagery, because he didn't only use the boys like harlots, he used the women like harlots too. All right? But this is the worst of the things that they did. When they caused the abominations. These are abominations. Now, if it was just merely selling a girl for wine to drink, the alcoholic beverage, well, okay, well. But if there's something more sinister, which would cause Allah Hayam to call it out, and we know he's calling it out here, that means it was an abomination. And what is more abominable to Allah Hayam than cannibalism? So they weren't just trading our daughters for the liquor, the alcoholic beverage called wine. No. They're selling the children as human sacrifices so that they can drink their blood after they slaughter them, after they rape them. These are some beastly creatures. You see, because they don't have the spirit of Allah Hayam or anything of Him in them. There's just darkness, and that's why these Gentiles that are left on the earth, the ones that haven't died, they have to prove that they really want a portion of our inheritance. They truly want to worship Allah Hayam, because look at the kind of things that their forefathers were into. Abominations of all kinds. You think homosexuality is something new? It's been going on from the dawn of time. You think taking advantage of little ones is something new? It's been going on from the dawn of time. And they use our children. You're going to read something right now in the next slide. You're going to read some stuff. Either the next slide or the next two slides. You're going to read some stuff. Why all this happened to us. We deserved it. We deserved it because we were living in peace in our own land. And all we had to do was to ignore the wickedness that the other nations were doing and just remain righteous and holy before Allah Hayam. That's all we needed to do. He gave us everything. Listen, we had a land that we did not have to sow. We walked into a land that was already bountiful. All we needed to do was to harvest it. And it yielded its fullness, with great force. It yielded 100-fold. And as long as we kept his commandments, not just amongst ourselves, but even for the land, as long we maintain our worship to Allah Hayam, we would have been living in safety and completely protected with his glory all around us and him dwelling in our midst. But that's not what our forefathers did. They got it too sweet. They got it too easy. So they start looking around and like, oh, well, I see these people are doing this, this, and this. Why can't we do that? Because Allah Hayam said it's an abomination to him. You can't take your baby and throw it in the fire. It's an abomination. Oh, but I see the other nations doing it, and nothing happens to them. They seem to be still functioning, and actually they're living happier than us because they get to enjoy all the things that we're told not to do. But we would love to do them because they look like fun. It looks like fun. It looks like fun to go and play around with other women and men together, to have orgies. It's fun to do all that stuff. Hey, why do I have to keep Shabbat? But because if I keep Shabbat, I can't do all of the above. I got to keep Shabbat and not light a fire. I can't go for long walks. I can't have intercourse with my wife or with my husband, what have you. Because they look at the other nations and saw that the other nations were living like harlots. And they thought that it was fun. It looked like fun because the devils lied to them and said, you're missing out. You're missing out on fun. Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do that? Don't you know that your God is causing you to miss out on some fun? Isn't that what Satan said to Hawa in the Garden of Eden? When he tempted her to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? It was that fear of missing out. FOMO, that's what they call it with children. Fear of missing out. And because of that fear of missing out, she took the bait. And that has set the stage for us ever since. Satan come and bait us. Oh, don't you see that other people are having more fun than you? Why do you have to do this? Look, they're still living. Nothing's happening to them. Allah Hayam is not getting angry with them. He's not going to get angry with you either because you're of the offspring of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You're entitled. Anyways, these are the kind of evil thoughts that he will bombard people with, and he's been bombarding our people with. And that's why they succumb and they do the things that Allah Hayam said not to do. All the abominable acts of the other nations around them. Because it looked like fun. Anyways, let's move on. So the ideal way for these pagan heathens to get drunk is to drink the blood of our babies and sacrifice them to their gods. The drinking of their blood is part of their sacrificial rituals. No wonder Allah Hayam wants to take vengeance, especially against these wicked nations. This was part of the curses that our forefathers were warned about. All right? This verse 3 here is pointing at the abominations that these nations were doing with our people. Abominations. Okay, let's read. Okay, so it was this verse, this chapter and verses that I was referring to, not the next two slides. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 32. Your sons and your daughters shall be given unto another people, and your eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. You're going to have children, but you're not going to be able to keep them. You're going to breed. Sorry to say that. You're going to be like livestock and breed. And then the master is going to come and take away the children and sell them for whatever purposes that they have in mind. All right? Because now our people become like cattle. And they use them for breeding. That's why there was a lot of rape too with our people. The master came and raped the women so that they can multiply. He can increase the numbers of his slaves. It was wickedness too. And there shall be no might in your hand, no strength in your hand. You can't even fight. Imagine our people that were a mighty people, mighty in battle. But the Most High, when He is not leading us, we're nothing. We're nothing. We have no might. We have no power. We get all our power from Him. He's the one who fills us with power. Power to fight against our enemies. And when He withdraws Himself, He withdraws our might, our strength. Verse 41 of the same chapter. And you shall beget sons and daughters, but you shall not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. So they birth the children, and after a while the master is going to come and take them and sell them. You're not going to be enjoying your children, not for long. Go down now to verse 48 of the same chapter. Therefore shall you serve your enemies, which Yahweh shall send against you in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he have destroyed you. You've seen our people when they were in shackles. They got the iron around their necks, the iron around their hands, and the iron around their feet. And they're all chained together. All chained and linked together. Naked. All right? Naked. Men and women naked before these heathens and being sold. Do you know how, well, I'm not embarrassed, but how humiliating that is? It's humiliating. Because that's what sin does. And it brings shame and disgrace. And of course, they had to go through hunger and thirst, not just nakedness. In want of all things. Then you're walking around with this big, heavy metal thing around your necks. And your hands and your feet. And if you don't walk fast enough, they whip you. And they spit upon you. Verse 49. Yahweh shall bring a nation against them from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies. And I have that highlighted for a reason. A nation whose tongue you shall not understand. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Why? Because they don't care about us. Then when they look upon us, they see us as cattle. Cattle, nothing else, animals. You hear some of them calling us monkeys and all kind of garbage. Wait till you see, wait until Allah Hayam bring vengeance on this earth against these same Gentiles. You just watch and see. We'll see who the monkey will be at the end of the day. You will see who the monkey really is at the end of the day. I tell you, he's going to turn a lot of them into beasts, you know. He's going to bring darkness upon their minds so that they will not act like humans anymore. They're the ones that are going to turn into the monkeys. In fact, the monkey is too civilized. They'll turn into a creature of darkness. So they have no respect for the old people, and they have no respect for the babies, the young, the children. So if you see, they will see the old person hobbling around. You're of no use to me, and they killed them. They killed them. Too old, too crippled. You're no use. Kill them. And have no respect or favor for the young, the babies. Rip the babies from the mother's arms and throw them to the crocodiles. This is what our people brought upon ourselves. But these nations had no right to do these things to us, and that's why Allah Hayam is going to take vengeance on these. Let's jump down to verse 64 of the same verse. This book of Deuteronomy, the Barayam, chapter 28, it has the list of blessings and the list of curses, and these are the curses that our people have been going through all these generations. Verse 64, and Yahweh shall scatter you among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. Among these nations shall you find no ease. You're not going to have any peace. Neither shall the sole of your foot have rest. You're always going to be rolling from here to there. That's why you even see it in the marriages of our people. They can't stay with one person. They got to roll from one man to another or one woman to another. They have no ease. They have no rest. All right? You see it a lot amongst our people. And that's why some of them want multiple wives, because they want to legalize this. It's called lust. But Yahweh shall give you there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. That's why we are the way how we are today. Trembling heart, failing of the eyes, and the sorrow of mind. Pulling your hair out, trying to make ends meet. No matter what you do, you can't get ahead. The only way that you can get ahead is if you sell out. Some of them go and marry other nations to get out from under this curse. But they don't realize that they've placed themselves under a worse curse, because now they've lost their inheritance and Allah Hayam is going to destroy them. So you think that you're living large because you marry someone of another nation and you seem to be getting ahead. You have your nice house and whatnot. But you don't know what's waiting for you down the road. The nation of fierce countenance that is compared to be as swift as an eagle flies is speaking of the Roman Empire, who we know had slaughtered, enslaved, and scattered our forefathers. The Roman Empire, led by the likes of Titus and Antiochus, were considered ruthless and absolutely evil. We know that our slavery did not stop there, but continued in what we know as the transatlantic slave trade. It is because of all these periods of times in slavery, the persecutions, and the indoctrinations that led us to be a people living in total ignorance until Allah Hayam awakened us out of our stupor. It is Him that woke us up to the reality of who we are. They tried, the heathens tried, they used religion, they used education, they used science, they used all kinds of things to keep us in the dark. But Allah Hayam called forth the light Out of Hashak, which is our darkness, the blindness that we were in, he called forth his light. And we finally realized, hey, but wait a second, how come Chinese have China, Japanese have Japan, Indians have India? I saw that on a video and it makes absolute sense. So where are people? Where do we belong? Where do we belong? We know we don't belong to the islands that we were born in as slaves, right? Or well, we are still slaves regardless. So Africans will say to you, you're not African. All right? An African will look at us and say, you're not African. You're not African. So if we're not African and we're not from the islands, where were we from? Good question, right? Truly, these curses that our forefathers had to endure that were passed on to us today were deserving. And still, there is so much rebellion amongst our people because they are choosing to worship other gods and not Allah Hayam. And that's the reason why many of our people are going to be destroyed by Allah Hayam himself. He's going to destroy many of our people, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, starting with the southern kingdom first. Why? Because we're still insisting on worshiping the pagan gods of our slave masters that were given to us, to our forefathers, by the way. Yes, they were given to our forefathers when they became slaves in the islands where they were living. Not only the islands, but wherever they scattered us, whether in the US, UK, wherever. And so we find ourselves under these churches, either Catholic, Anglican, Methodist, all right? What have you, all these denominations that demonized us, right? We found ourselves worshiping this Jesus that looked nothing like us. He looked like our slave master, right? And still, our people today are insisting on calling on these same entities as their gods, even though we were not of these nations. We were never of these nations that we were born in. We were born somewhere else. So if we were born somewhere else, it's just natural that we will have our own gods. Well, let me just change that. We will have our own creator. We will have our own savior. We will have our own person that we worship. Don't want to call him God. And it's later when we start questioning, then he will reveal himself to us and say, well, by the way, I'm not a God. I'm Allah Hayam. But you got to search for him. And before you search for him, you got to give up the gods that you're serving. The pagan gods that you're serving. If you're insisting on calling on Jesus as your God, then he's not going to reveal himself to you. He will not share his glory with another. No, he's not. You got to let go of what you think you know in order to be led to the unknown where he is. Because what we think we know is what has been given to us, to our forefathers, that's been passed down to us. And so we are indoctrinated. We got to come out from the lies, the deception. And it's not an easy thing to do for some people because they want to hold on to what they know. They don't want to enter into a place of unknown, of the unknown, because they don't know what they're going to find. But that too is deception. Until we choose to worship Him and Him alone, we will for sure continue in these curses until we are condemned for all eternity. So the clock is ticking, by the way. The clock is ticking because, like I said, I did a study called The 3 Days of Darkness, a big study. And when that darkness descends, then the fate of the southern kingdom is sealed. Those who choose to worship Allah Hayam and follow and walk in His commandments, they'll be sealed and preserved. And they'll be preserved in His light. The darkness will have no effect on them. But those who do not, He's going to destroy them. In those 3 days, He's going to torment them. In fact, though, He'll send the devils to torment them for him. That's what He does. And then finally, He's going to destroy them and bury their bodies. No one's going to see or know what happened to the southern kingdom. Just going to realize there are a lot less of Negroes in America, a lot less Negroes in the islands. That's where it's going to be noticed the most, in the islands, the Caribbean islands, because that's the greatest concentration, as well as the U.S., of our people. And when you see the islands looking scant with Negroes, and the only ones there are the ones from Africa, the Africans, the Canaanites, and what have you. But generally, the population has greatly diminished. That's the reason why. But people will not know what happened to them. Only the Most High would know. But He's only taken up a remnant of the southern kingdom, because only a remnant have chosen to worship Him and put away the pagan gods and the pagan worship of their forefathers. You better wake up. All right, let's look at verse 4 and 5 of Yawaal chapter 3. Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense, which means Gamal to deal with and repay me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. Because you have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples my goodly, pleasant things. So now He's calling out these two nations. Actually 3, the coast of Palestine, Tyre and Zidon. And He's saying some things here to them, talking about recompense. You can't repay me for what you've done to my people, for what you've done with my goodly things, my silver and my gold. You can't repay me, but I'm going to repay you for all that you have done. Because what you have done, you've done it against me. So let's see what this Tyre and Zidon is all about. Now, much of our history have been lost due to the evil powers that have either destroyed, hidden, or contaminated our Bible scripts. So we had a lot of books. But these devils, because they had an agenda to destroy us. They wanted to destroy us. If they couldn't destroy us, then deceive us. All right? So they couldn't destroy us because we are the chosen people. So they figured, okay, we can't destroy them, then let's corrupt them. Let's feed them a lot of lies. Let's keep them in the dark as to their true identity. Let's on every level, let us deceive these people. Right? We educate them. We get them involved in religions. Right? All these layers of deception will keep them in the dark about who they really are. All right? This is what they've done. And part of that deception is to destroy as much of our books as possible. What they couldn't destroy, they have hidden, and what they couldn't hide, because Allah would not permit them to destroy everything, they contaminate it with their gods. That's why in the Bible you see Jesus, you see God, you see Lord, you see all the pagan gods that they serve. We see Mary, who is the Queen of Heaven. We see Eve, who is also the Queen of Heaven, another name for her. All right? All these are their gods that they serve. So they figure, well, let's corrupt them. Tyre and Zidon are mentioned in the Bible. Even HaMashayach spoke about them. Yet little is known concerning them, taking the silver and the gold of the tabernacle, then to place them in their temples, which would be an abomination in the eyes of Yahweh. So when you take his goodly things, which would be his silver and his gold articles, out of his tabernacle and place them in your temple, which should be a pagan temple, it will be considered an abomination to Allah, because those things are holy. They've been blessed by him. They've been made holy. Not even the priest, the Lawai, the priesthood, could not manhandle or mishandle the holy things in the tabernacle or in the temple. Allah had rules for how they ought to be handling his things when they took down the tabernacle, when they set it up, all the things. He had rules. Otherwise, he would strike out against them. So imagine these heathens now come into his temple or tabernacle temple and take out his golden articles, his silver articles, and put them in their temple. Oh yeah, that's what they've done. But we'll see how this all kind of plays together. Now this will be an abomination, because the articles of Yahweh's tabernacle were considered holy, and only the priests of the tribe of Lewi were instructed on how to handle them. For anyone else to take the precious items from Yahweh's tabernacle, or his temple, then to place them in their pagan temple would be considered an abomination. Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, made that mistake. Now, before we go into this story, let's consider the many times our tabernacle, our temple, was infiltrated and the articles were taken out. Nebuchadnezzar, he took them out. This is after the 12 tribes were split and the northern kingdom was already gone, long time. All right? This is now dealing with the southern kingdom. So he came and he took the articles out of the tabernacle, out of the temple, and took it to his own place, his palace, and wherever else he will keep them. Then you have the Greeks, the Medes and Persians. Sorry, I'm going in order of the ones that conquered us. Then you have the Medes and Persians, then you have the Greeks, and then finally you have the Romans. All right? Those are the ones that conquered us. And you're going to see how they are connected to Tyre and Zidon. All right. Yawaal chapter 5 verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of Allah, which was at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. So they took the holy things. They were having their little party, and they're like, hey, My father have these things that came out of the Israelites. Let's not call them Israelites. Yashra'al's temple. Let us let us have some festivities with them. Let us enjoy them. Why are they just sitting there collecting dust? At least Nebuchadnezzar had a lot more sense than his son. His son was drunk and foolish, right? So he was having way too much fun with all that wine he was drinking. And he's like, hey, you know what? Let's bring those, let's bring those cups out. But you see, this thing that happened for a reason, right? Because the power was going to be switched now from Babylon to Medes and Persia. And this was the catalyst that caused the switch from Babylon losing their power to be like an empire, and Medes and Persia come in and destroy the king and took over the realm. All right. This was it. This was the main reason why this happened, right? This is what Alahayam used to toss Babylon out and now brought in the Medes and Persian. Because we know that the Medes and Persian, they weren't all that bad with us. All right? They weren't all that bad. They allowed us to rebuild our temple. If my memory is correct. So it was time for a power shift. So Belshazzar was having way too much fun. All right? So anyways, let's read on. Verse 4, they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. And the self same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the pleister of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. This is when he saw the words tene up Harsin, I believe that's what it was. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote one against each other. So his knees were knocking. His knees were knocking. He was so frightened when he saw this man's hand, but no man, right? And it wrote a poem on the wall. Actually, it was judgment that Alahayam was writing on the wall, right? And that's when he called for someone to interpret what was written. It was not Tene, it's Mene Upharsin. I just remember. Mene Upharsin. All right? And his mother remembered Danayal, who was still governor in the land. He was older now. And she called him a man of Alahayam, a man of great wisdom. So he called him to interpret what those words were on the wall. And of course, Danayal said, hey, listen, you did not learn the lesson that your father learned, because his father was praising, sorry, just hit my mic, I'm sorry. His father was praising himself for his own kingdom, and he was warned in a dream not to do that. And he ended up doing it anyway a year later. I believe it was a year later. And he turned into a beast for 7 years because he took the glory from Alahayam. Alahayam gave him the position to be king. All right? And he was praising himself. And then after he came back, he became a man again, could think like a man and not like a beast. He gave praise to Alahayam. And now his son here now is praising the gods of gold and silver and wood and stone and brass and silver and iron. And then Ayal said, obviously, you have not learned anything from your father's mistake. So let's pick up from verse 22. And you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew this, knew about what happened to his father. I mean, he was an animal for 7 years. All right. But have lifted up yourself against Yahweh of heavens, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine in them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and Allahayam, in whose are all your ways, have you not glorified. So he glorified everything but Allahayam. He didn't even consider Allahayam. He just, the things around him that his hands can touch, he gave praises to them. Go down to verse 30 of the same chapter. Danayah chapter 5. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. So this was his judgment. Because Allahayam, according to the words written, it said he was weighed and found lacking. All right, he was weighed in the balance and found lacking. So that was judgment. And that judgment meant he was going to be destroyed. And that happened, it's happened in the same night. And let's see who destroyed him. Verse 31, and Darius the Median, he's from the Medes and Persian, took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. He was 62 years old. Darius was 62 years old when he conquered Babylon. Wow. When Allahayam is ready to exact his judgments and his punishments, he does so within his own timing. Belshazzar's judgment and punishment came that same night, whereas this judgment of Tyre and Zidon is coming in the end times. For more than just what they have done to his silver and his gold articles, but also what they did to his people. In the earlier days, it appeared that Tyre and Zidon were allies to Yashraal. But something changed to make them enemies of Yashraal, so that Allahayam sent his judgments in the form of prophecies against them. The evidence of a betrayal is stated in the prophecies read in Yawaal pertaining to them. But if we look at Yasha'oya to see their judgments, then we will realize that something did take place to cause them to change from allies to the enemies of our forefathers. So I did not include any of those scriptures because it was not relevant to go off the path of what we are looking at here. We're looking at the war of Har Magadan, and Tyre and Zidon popped up. All right. So all we need to know, and I have it written down here, so instead of repeating myself, let me just read on. These two peoples, these two nations, were located within the province of the tribe of Asher, which is now located in southern Lebanon. So let me pause there. When Yahweh, who is Joshua, allotted the provinces to the 12 tribes, the province that was given to Asher included these two nations. These two nations were still living in the land. And remember what Allahayam said to them? I allowed them to stay, but you have to drive them out. I'm not going to drive them out completely from the land. Otherwise, the land is going to overgrow with beasts and what have you. These people are there to help you maintain order in the land. But as your numbers begin to grow, keep driving them out until they're completely gone from you, until you've completely destroyed them. But what our people did, they made them slaves so that they had to pay tribute to them. So they never drove out the remaining nations that were still living in our land. And that came back and bite bit us in the rear end in the end. All right? So the area that is called Southern Lebanon, what that was all part of our land, right? And that's why it says here, you've divided up my land. All right, you take my land, you divided it up amongst the nations. And this is one of the nations that they divided up the land of Yashwa'al and given it to them, giving it to Lebanon. Now, the tribe of Ashar were supposed to overthrow these Canaanites who are also Phoenicians. That's who they were originally. They were Phoenicians who were also Canaanites. Now, they called them Phoenicians because they were the traveling type. They were like merchants. They used to travel along the sea and sell their goods and whatnot. They also sold our children. They're the ones who enslaved our people and sold them. All right? But they were of the origins, their origins will be the Canaanites. And remember, it was the land of the Canaanites that we had to drive out. So all of them, even though they have different names, their origin would have been the Canaanites. All right. So they were supposed to overthrow these Canaanites slash Phoenicians, but they did not. And this was the turnaround in their relationship. Because at some point in time, these people always turn around and war against us. And what happens, this is typical of our people, you have these other nations living amongst us, we see them worshiping other gods, and you follow suit. You follow them to worship their gods. And then in the end, the same people that were our slaves, we become their slaves. All right? We become their slaves. We are conquered by them. So something happened with Tyre and Zidon that caused them to be able to take our children and also to take our silver and gold from our temple. All right? Something happened. The Zidonians were prominent idolaters, and Jezebel, the wife of Ahab, was of this nation. We also know that Shalamam married wives that were Zidonians, which added to the idolatry in Yashwa'al, the worship of Baal or Baal. All right? So we know Zidonians have always been in our land. Even before the northern kingdom had left, we had Zidonians living there. So Zidonians, we came into the land and the Zidonians were there. And we left the land and the Zidonians were still there, right? We fled from our land and they were still there. But they weren't there operating as Zidonians, okay? Because what happened is these Phoenicians were very good at amalgamating themselves amongst other nations. All right? Don't worry, it's going to get clear soon. The Zidonians were notorious traders and even traded in men, which will not be surprising when the Greeks conquered Jerusalem. So they all kind of sided with our enemies. All right? The Zidonians, along with their neighbor Tyre, would have partaken in capturing those of the southern kingdom to sell them to the Greeks. But this was intentional by Elohim, as he wanted to punish the southern kingdom for their idolatry. Yet Elohim will punish the ones who enslaved our forefathers, driving them from their land. Our forefathers driving them from their land. Now, we're still not out of Tyre and Zidon yet. We're going to see some more about these people. Let's look at verses 6 to 8 of Yawaal chapter 3. Habanai also of Yahawada and Habanai of Yarowashalam. That means the children of Yahawada and the children of Yarowashalam have you sold on to the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their borders. So they want to get rid of us out of our own land. So when the Greeks came, they helped the Greeks to get rid of us. So you see how tables were turned? They were our slaves. They were paying tribute to us. But because of our disobedience and the tables were turned, now we become their slaves. All right? Verse 7, behold, I will raise them up out of the place where you have sold them and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of Habanai or Yahawada. That means the children of Yahawada. That will be the southern kingdom, by the way. And they shall sell them to the Sabeans, to a people far off, for Yahweh has spoken. So the Sabeans were the people of Sheba. Remember you heard about the queen of Sheba? All right, these are the Sabeans. Sabeans. All right? So they're Africans. So we take their children and we sell them to the Africans. And this is going to happen in the end days. All right? We can see that Elohim has not forgotten what these two Canaanite nations did to the southern kingdom and has promised to recompense them for their evil deed. Elohim remembers all the evil deeds done to his people throughout the ages and will seek vengeance on all who have persecuted his people. Elohim has promised that as they sold our children, so will he cause their children to be sold by our hand to a nation in Africa called Sheba or the Sabaeans. We know that Tyre and Zidon are not nations today, as they were in the days of our forefathers. Therefore, this prophecy is being aimed at the offspring of these two nations. Remember, we, the southern kingdom, are the offspring of our forefathers who brought themselves under curses. And we are suffering the curses on behalf of our forefathers. So now, the same thing with Tyre and Zidon. The offspring of Tyre and Zidon will bear the consequences of what their forefathers have done. They still have this promise of vengeance upon their heads until this prophecy is fulfilled. Also to note, modern day Phoenicians, who were also called Canaanites, who were also of these two nations, meaning Tyre and Zidon, are related to the Europeans today. Hello, they are related to the Europeans today. They were traders. So wherever they go, wherever they went to trade their merchandise, whether slaves or things, they amalgamated amongst the people. So the people that were buying from them were the people that we call Europeans, the Greeks, which is like Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, France, Africa, even Northern Africa, like Libya, Algeria, and Tunisia. All right? This is where they expanded their territories because they amalgamated amongst those people. So when you hear Elohim is bringing vengeance upon Tyre and Zidon, he's talking about their offspring that will be living at this period of time based on what their forefathers have done to us, the Europeans. And a lot of these Europeans, let me tell you, people, the ones that live in America, they're Europeans too. They're the offspring of Europeans. So we're not just talking about Spain and Portugal and France and Cyprus, Greece and Rome. We're not just talking about those places. I forgot to put Rome in there. All right? We're talking about worldwide because just like how we scattered worldwide, these ones here, Tyre and Zidon, as they multiplied, as they amalgamated amongst other nations, they were also spreaded far and wide. And that's why he tied them down to two nations. He tied it down to two nations. All right? That's who he's coming after. All of the ones of the European descent that harmed us. That harmed us, because not all of them harmed us. So to name the few, let me read again. They're related to the Europeans today, like Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, and France. Also the north coast of Africa, of Libya, Algeria, and Tunisia, to name a few of these countries where the Phoenicians amalgamated themselves. Hence, the prophecy will be aimed at these European and Northern Africans, but it's not limited to them. These are just naming a few. It's not limited to just these ones, okay? We're talking about there are going to be people in Canada, going to be people in the UK, there are going to be those in America, all over, whose children will be sold to an African nation as slaves like our forefathers were. So we're going to take their children and we're going to sell them, but we'll be kinder to them than they were to us. That's for sure. Okay, let's look at verse 9 to 11 of Revelation, not Revelation, of Yawaal chapter 3. Proclaim you this among the Gentiles. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. So he's telling these nations now, these same nations that he wants to punish, the same 10 kings, the beast empire, because that's what all this is where they're all going to be concentrated as. They're going to form these armies together. They've been forming themselves throughout the ages, and this is what they have become. The beast empire. Okay, led by these satans. All right. And their worshippers. And their satans. Yeah, I think I said satans before. So he's drawing them and he's telling them, get ready for war. And come into the land. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. I remember when I was in the church, I think there was a song that we used to sing called, I can't remember the name of the song, but part of the phrase was, let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich. Yeah. So this is where this is taken from. But this is not pertaining to Yashraal. This is pertaining to the enemy, right? He's telling them, it's almost like he's luring them. He's giving them, put a bit in their mouth now, and he's drawing them to our land because he wants to destroy them. So those who were farming, because let me tell you, Revelation chapter 6, that speaks about the sixth seal with the great earthquake that will destroy technology. Men will have to go back to plowing their lands using plowshares, using pruning hooks. There will not be any kind of technology on this earth after seal number 6. That's why the technology that you see today that is expanding at such an alarming rate is going to be soon destroyed. All right? So some of these people that will join up with the armies of these satans will be farmers. And he's saying, okay, well, you know what? Time to stop farming. Get your plowshares and turn them into swords. Get your pruning hooks and turn them into spears, because those are the only instruments now that they have at their disposal to war against HaMashayach and his people. And he's saying to them, don't even consider yourself weak. Pretend you're strong. Right? You're strong. You're not weak. Because you have great numbers. You're coming out in great numbers. So don't think that you're weak. No. You're not weak. You're strong. Because he's luring them, right? And they're being deceived in their minds. Even the devils are deceiving their own servants, their own worshipers. Hey, come on, guys. We can do this. We got this. All right? Verse 11, assemble yourselves and come, all you heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Where cause your mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. All right, so he's calling them, he's telling them, come, 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 just like he's going to do with Gog and Magog. We see that Allah Hayam is calling for the mighty ones, the kings and the captains of the Gentile nations to come down to war against his people. He is the one luring them into our land because he wants to avenge our blood that they have shed even in our land. At this point of time, only Yashraal will have mountains and hills, as all other mountains are destroyed. Hence, he's calling them to come up to our land. Then they'll be led down to the valley for their destruction. All right? So, yes, between the earthquake that will come, the great earthquake that will come in seal number 6 and all the other earthquakes that are coming, and even the earthquake, that great massive earthquake that is going to come in vial number 7, all the hills and mountains are going to come down flat, and only hills and hills and mountains will be in our land. All right? All the islands are going to flee away. There'll be no more islands. No more islands, just one landmass. Let's see where I've left off. So he's calling them to come up to our land and led down to the valley for their destruction. This war is the war of the 3 evil spirits leading the 10 kings with their armies. If you notice that Allah Hayam tells them to turn their plowshares and pruning hooks into weapons, which confirms that this will be at the end of time when there's no more technology. So it can't be now when there's technology. Why would they use plowshares and pruning hooks as weapons? No, this is at a time when there's no more technology, and technology will be wiped off the face of this earth forever. Forever. Men will have to rely on hand tools for farming, as they will no longer have access to modern equipment. Right? We're back to where it was in the beginning. Manual labor. Manual labor. Yes, we have the oxen and the horses and the mules and what have you to help us pull the plowshares, right? But it's called manual labor. Back to that. Verse 12 of Yawaal, chapter 3. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Yahawashi, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So you see, he's the one who's calling our enemies into our land because he has a plan. And his plan is to destroy them. Because he's sitting as judge now. He's not only is he sitting as judge, but he's executing that judgment. And he's going to do it through his son. Allah Hayam is calling for these heathen nations to come out against his people in the valley of judgment. This is where he's leading them. Why he sits as a judge. All right? Where he, Allah Hayam, will judge these heathen nations for all their abominations and their wickedness. That's why we took time to look at the wickedness that they've done to our people. We know that Yahawashi means Yahweh has judged. Therefore, this entire sentence confirms that Allah Hayam will sit as judge and will send his son as his judge to execute his punishment against these nations. Right? He's going to sit as judge because he has spoken. And he has spoken this prophecy long before this event is due to take place. The book of Yawaal, chapter 5, the book of John, chapter 5, verse 30. I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of Abba who has sent me. And this is the reason why Allah Hayam Yahweh sends his son HaMashayach to act on his behalf. HaMashayach acts on Allah Hayam Yahweh's behalf. He acts as his judge because he does not proclaim his own judgment. He only judges according to what his Father has given to him. Whatever the Father gives to him to speak, he speaks. And whatever the Father tells him to do, he does it. He does not seek his own. He does not seek his own will, only the will of Ha'aba. HaMashayach will be the warrior and conquering Malak who will be coming to bring the judgment of Yahweh upon the inhabitants on the earth. His judgment is just and righteous, and in righteousness he judges. He can't judge any other way. Psalms 9, verse 4. For you have maintained my right and my cause. You sit on the throne judging right. You have rebuked the heathen. You have destroyed the wicked. You have put out their name forever and ever. O you enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and you have destroyed cities. Isn't that what Allah has been doing up to this point of time? Yes, he is. Their memorial is perished with them. So there'll be no memory of them after they're done, after they're destroyed. Verse 7, but Yahweh shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment, and he shall judge the world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness. That's why we need to walk in uprightness. We need to walk in righteousness and in holiness. Otherwise, we're going to fall under his judgment, his wrath. Even his own people. Verse 13 of Yawaal. I keep saying Yawaal. Yawaal chapter 3. The book of Joel chapter 3. Put you in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press, the wine press is full. The fats or the vats overflow. That's where they keep the wine after they've crushed the grapes. For their wickedness is great. Anytime we see this expression of a winepress used in conjunction with the wrath of Allah or the wickedness of the inhabitants, is speaking of the judgment, punishment, and subsequent destruction of the same inhabitants spoken of. The prophet is speaking poetically and symbolically to help us to understand that evil has come to its ripeness and its fullness, and now it is time for its harvest. It will be cast into the winepress, where the harvest of evil will be trodden down until they exist no more. This was the same language that was used for the southern kingdom when it was time for the righteous remnant to be regathered and the rebels to be destroyed. So let's look at Revelation according to the Bible. Revelation chapter 14 verse 19. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of Allah. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. And the reason why he's given us the depth and the length is to show us the multitudes of our people that will be destroyed. The multitudes of our people that are rebels that he will destroy. That's a lot of blood. That's what the winepress represents. The blood after he has destroyed our people. All right. Yawaal. Again, Yawaal. Oh my goodness. Yawaal chapter 3 verse 14. Yawaal, the book of Joel chapter 3 verse 14. Multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. So it's going to be many people coming in the valley of decision, the valley of judgment, the valley of Yahawashaphat. All right. Har Magadan. Many people coming against HaMashayach and his saints. And we will be the minority. We will be a remnant. Okay? Remember, he gathered only a remnant of the southern kingdom and a remnant of the northern kingdom. We have not yet multiplied because we have started multiplying at this point of time because the ceiling of the 144,000, but they're still young ones, right? They're still young ones. But our numbers have not blossomed as yet. But we will see the numbers being blossomed after the 1,000-year reign of HaMashayach, because we're going to have 1,000 years to blossom as a people. We know that there will be a great multitude that will come against HaMashayach and the saints, because this will be the beast empire, number 8, inclusive of all their armies and other inhabitants that will take up arms with them. The Satans, and of course the voided anti-Messiah. He is voided because there is no more Satan in him. He's just a mere man. Well, he's a mere creature now. He's diseased looking, and he has a mind of a beast. All right? But he's voided. He's empty of power. He has no power. All right? So I call him the voided anti-Messiah, empty anti-Messiah, who will all be riding in this great multitude. Allah Hayam will draw them in the valley of judgment, which will be his decision. That is his decision, to draw them there, to destroy them. So let's look at verse 15 of the same chapter 3 of Yawaal. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Now, there are pivotal times during these end times events where the sun, moon, and stars are greatly affected. And we've seen that throughout the book of Revelation as we were studying it. All right? So let's look at Yeshaiah chapter 13, verse 9. Behold, the day of Yahweh comes, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. So there's a darkness in the heavens. And I will punish the world for the evil. So this is a worldwide event, because this is a judgment coming against who? The earth, the inhabitants on the earth. And I will punish the world for the evil and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. So who will be the proud? Who will be the arrogant ones? Who will be the haughty ones of the terrible, the haughtiness of the terrible? He's speaking here because this event here is speaking about the sixth seal. When it is open, the sun will go dark, and so the moon will not cause her light to shine. I know that in Revelation chapter 6, it talks about the moon becoming as blood, as well as Yawaal chapter 2, because these three scriptures are talking about the same events. So we have Yeshaiah, who is Isaiah, speaking about it, and we have Yohanan, who is John the apostle, speaking about it, and now we have Yawaal, who is Joel, speaking about the same event. It is the same event. Don't worry that the moon here says, because I have it highlighted in red, that the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Because if the moon is like blood, is her light shining? What is the color of the moon when she's shining? She is bright and beautiful. But when she is darkened by the color, making her like the color of blood, meaning she's red, how much light can she produce? There's no light. There's no light. So this is the same scripture, because if you read the words here on this in these verses, it helps you to understand that Allah Hayam is speaking through his prophet, talking about the end times. That's why he said, I will punish the world. He's not talking about a particular nation or a couple of nations. He's talking about the whole world. And within the world, he's speaking about the wicked in the world, the arrogant ones, the proud ones, the haughty ones, the terrible ones. He's speaking of the beast empire and their agents, the beasts and their agents and their earthly agents. Verse 12, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place. And the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of Yahweh ol Sabaoth, that is Yahweh of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. This verse 13 confirms that this is speaking of the sixth seal. There is no other time that the earth will remove out of her place except in the sixth seal, when he's going to cause all the continents to come together to be one landmass. All right? At the sixth seal, there will be a great earthquake that will bring to a sudden halt the war between the northern kingdom of Yasha'al and the NWO, Beast Empire number 7. That's the New World Order, Beast Empire number 7, the technology-based empire. Yahweh will use this great earthquake to destroy the technology of this empire, rendering it powerless and useless, causing it to go underground to regroup itself. And these are the ones because they're using technology for their wickedness. Look around you today and tell me if these people are not walking around behaving like they're so arrogant and proud of themselves, of their wickedness, haughty, thinking that no one can take them down because they're controlling all the governments around the world. They're controlling all the systems around the world, right? So now they've risen up to a place of extreme arrogance. When you watch them being interviewed, they say things and then they know at this point in time they can say whatever they want to say, and nothing and no one can do anything to stop them. But they're not counting on Allah Hayam, because when he sends that sixth seal, when he opens the sixth seal, right? We're talking about HaMashayach, Allah Hayam. When he opens the sixth seal, their arrogance are going to cease. Right? Their haughtiness is going to cease. He's going to just stop them short. All right, let's look at Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And this is according to the Bible. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So this earthquake was so tremendous that it would cause the heaven to depart like a scroll. And we've discussed these before, so I'm not going to go back into detail. I'm just showing you that there's always a time in the end times events where the sun and the moon and the stars are affected. Yawaal chapter 2 verse 30, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahweh shall be delivered. For in Mount Sion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yahweh has said, and in the remnant whom Yahweh shall call. So this is speaking of the northern kingdom, because we know that this prophecy was given to the northern kingdom. All right? Because the great earthquake in seal number 6 is going to bring a halt to the war that they will fight against the NWO, the technology-based empire. They're going to wake up. After we're taken, they're going to be awakened from their sleep, and then they're going to have a choice to worship Allah Hayam or not, or worship the beast. All right? So they're going to pick up arms and they're going to fight. And it's their time to fight because this is their time to be martyred. All right? This is a time of martyrdom for them. But not all are going to die. He is going to cause this earthquake to come and stop this beast empire in its tracks, destroying all of technology. All right? Just before the coming of HaMashayach in the clouds to gather the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom, there will be 3 days of darkness that will shroud this entire earth. So in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. By the sixth trumpet, the angel would declare that time should be no longer, as time will cease to exist from this point onward. This means that the sun will cease to traverse across the sky, as we know that time is dependent on the sun rising and setting. This will be the perpetual day until HaMashayach comes to be the true light on the earth. So Allah Hayam at trumpet number 6 is going to stop the sun from moving in the sky. The sun is going to remain stable, stationary in the sky until Allah Hayam no longer needs the sun. Okay? But for now, at this point of time, as we're reading, and we're going to read it, Revelation chapter 10, verse 5, according to the Bible. But at this point of time, when time is no longer at the sixth trumpet, he's weaning the earth off time because he's getting ready to bring his last set of judgments, which would be the 7 vials, so that his son can come and we will be living in a perpetual day. All right? We'll be living in a perpetual day until even throughout eternity. Because we will no longer be living in time. We'll be living in eternity. That's why he's weaning the earth off time. And the reason why he gave time to the earth is so that these events can come to pass, so that he can end evil once and for all. This was the reason why he gave this earth time. All right? We have time because these events have time attached to them. He has appointed a time for these events to take place that will cause the events to be fulfilled. And as the events are fulfilled, then he can bring an ending to evil. This is what he said to Adam and Hawa in the beginning. You have this earth has to live out its appointed period of time that I've given it. And he spoke about it too in Genesis chapter 6. He said 120 years, but he's speaking of 120 Yawaal years, which will be 6,000 years. So this earth, he's given time, and the time is 6,000 years until he brings back righteousness to the earth. So that's why we needed time. So at this point of time, we're looking at Revelation chapter 10, time, he is weaning the earth off time, because time is no longer needed, because the events are the events that are taking place are actually the end time events to bring an ending to evil, and that is quickly coming to an end. And the last 7 vials, actually the 7th trumpet and the last seven vials and the everything else after that will not need time. It will all happen in that perpetual day until the renewal of the earth, and then that renewal itself will be a perpetual day. All right? We know that this sorry, let's read Revelation chapter 10, verse 5. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven and swore by him that lived forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. So he stopped time at at trumpet number 6. We know that the sun will remain in the sky for the perpetual day, and it will be used to scorch the wicked inhabitants on the earth. This will be vial number 4. So let's look at Revelation chapter 16, verse 8. This is according to the Bible and not to the revised chapter. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of Allah, who have power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. So Allah, will be the final time that Allah will be using the sun until his son comes. So the sun remains in its place in the sky, does not go down. So there's a perpetual day happening. All right. Allah is bringing an ending to all evil on this earth. We see the sequence of events concerning the sun, how at times he was darkened until it was time for him to be paused in the sky. That should not have been a capitalized H. Sorry about that. For the perpetual day. So the sun was paused in the sky for the perpetual day. Now we have arrived at the time when the sun, the moon, and the stars will no longer be needed, and they will go permanently dark. This will usher in HaMashayach coming in his power and great glory that will be the light on the earth. So let's go back to that verse again in Yawaal chapter 3 verse 15. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. So at this point of time, we know that previous times that the sun went dark and then it came back. The moon went dark and it came back. All right. But this is the final time that the sun, the moon, and the stars will go dark, because Allah has removed them, or their purpose on the earth, for the earth. All right. They will go permanently dark because the light that is coming will be HaMashayach. And he will be the light on the earth from that point onward, all the way through to eternity. This is confirmed in Zechariah chapter 14, which we will look at in great detail, as this prophecy in Zechariah is tied to this end times prophecy concerning the war at Har Magadan. Zechariah chapter 14 verse 6, and it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day, which shall be known to Yahweh, not day nor night. This is the perpetual day. All right. But it shall come to pass that at evening, which is sunset time, at evening time, which is sunset, it shall be light. So even though it's supposed to be nighttime, there's still light. In the afternoon, light, morning, light. It's light throughout. It's a perpetual day. Let's read it again. And it shall come to pass in that day, meaning that last day, that perpetual day, just before HaMashayach comes, because he's letting us know. This is Zechariah now. Okay? I just took this verse out to show you that before the sun and the moon and stars go dark, before HaMashayach comes to be the light on the earth, that there is a perpetual day. All right? There is a perpetual day. So it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day, which shall be known to Yahweh, not day nor night. So there's neither day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. Here we can see the prophecy of Zechariah confirming the prophecy of Yawachanan and Yawaal, all regarding the war at Har Magadan. The rest of Zechariah's prophecy gives us a clear picture of HaMashayach returning to the earth the second time, but this time to be Malak and to rule the earth with his saints. Okay? We're going to be looking at Zechariah in the next study. Let's look at Yawaal chapter 3 verse 16 and 17. Yahweh shall also roar out of Sion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But Yahweh shall be the hope of his people and the strength of Habani ol Yashwa'al, the children of Yashwa'al. So shall you know that I am Yahweh Alahayakam, your Alahayam, dwelling in Sion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her any more. So we know that HaMashayach, when he comes to the earth, he is coming to land on Mount of Olives. We're going to see that in Zechariah chapter 14. When he enters this dimension through the eastern gate in heaven to land on Mount of Olives, it is because he is going to transform the Mount of Olives into his Mount Sion. We're going to see that in the next study. All right? And it will be from there that he will roar out of Sion. He will utter his voice out from Jerusalem. All right? Let's read on. The book of Yawaal is a book of prophecy directing us to the end times when the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al will be regathered. But it also tells us about the calamities that Yashwa'al has been going through until the time of our regathering. Chapter 2 focuses on the northern kingdom, and chapter 3 focuses on the return of HaMashayach with the saints of the southern kingdom to our land Yashwa'al. It will be at this time that he will reestablish his kingdom here on the earth. This is one of the first things that he is going to do before he rides out to the war in Har Magadan. And at the same time, reunite the two kingdoms together to make us one kingdom again. That's the next thing that he's going to do. He is going to make us, we were one kingdom before, then we were divided and became two kingdoms, and now he is going to bring us to be one kingdom again in his hand. When HaMashayach returns, he will be returning through his eastern heavenly gate, settling upon the Mount of Olives, which will become his center for worship. It will be from here where he will roar out of Sion, and the shaking of the heavens and the earth will be him reformatting the Mount of Olives into Mount Sion. This will be made more apparent when we study in detail Zechariah chapter 14. But for now, let's look at that verse. Zechariah chapter 14 verse 3, then shall Yahweh go forth and fight against those nations, the same ones that we spoke about in Revelation 19 and Yawaal chapter 3. As when he fought in the day of battle, and his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives. Now we say, we see here Yahweh, but we know that this is his son. We know that his son acts on the behalf of his father, of our father. So his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west. So there's going to be a line in the middle of the mountain from the east to the west. That means that the mountain is going to be split open at this point between from the east to the west. All right? And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north and half of it towards the south. So the Mount of Olives is going to split from the east to the west, and then it's the northern part is going to go towards the north, and the southern part is going to go towards the south, and in the middle is going to be a great valley. But what's going to happen to that valley? That valley is going to be raised up. We're going to see that in the next study. That valley is going to be raised up to be like a plain, like a plateau. And that it will be the new Mount Sinai. And not only will it be the Mount Sinai, no longer Mount of Olives, it's now Mount Sinai. And that's where Elohim Yahweh is going to establish his temple. He's going to plant his temple there. All right? His temple will be set up there. It will be a temple not made with hands of a man, but Elohim Yahweh himself is going to place it there. Verse 5, and you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, you shall flee like you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Yehoiada. And Yahweh Elohai shall come, and all the saints with you, all the saints with him, in other words. All right? So who is the ones that is going to flee? The ones that he is drawing, the nations that he is drawing to our land. And when this event occurs where the Mount of Olives is going to split and cause the earth to shake, these devils here are going to run scared, and they're going to run right where he wants them to go, in the valley of decision. Right? This is what's going to cause them to flee into the valley of decision, Har Magadan. All right? Ezekiel chapter 44 verse 1. And then he brought me back the way of the gate of the outward sanctuary, which looked towards the east, and it was shut. Then said Yahweh unto me, this gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened. No man shall enter in by it, because Yahweh Elohim Ol Yashwa'al has entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. It is for HaMashayach, the one lifted up. They call it the prince. All right, it is for the prince. HaMashayach, HaMashayach. He shall sit in it to eat bread before Yahweh. Who else could he be talking about? He is talking about HaMashayach. He is the Prince of Peace, is he not? He shall sit in it to eat bread before Yahweh. He shall enter in by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the way of the same. Now we're going to come back to this scripture, because this here is going to tie in to what is going to happen maybe in part 6, I believe. Yes, maybe in part 6, but we may touch on it in Zechariah, because this is a very important thing that is happening here with the prince, HaMashayach. All right? We will study in detail Malakana's entry, our king's entry through the eastern heavenly gate or portal. We're going to take a detailed look at that in part 6. I just don't have a title for it yet. To enter into our dimension from the heavens. He, the prince, according to Ezekiel, who is also Malakana, our king, will establish his tabernacle upon Mount Sayawan, which was once the Mount of Olives. Then he and his saints will ride through the eastern gate of his tabernacle to conquer these wicked armies of the beast in the valley of decision. Now, let me just pause here for 1 second. All right? HaMashayach with his saints, the southern kingdom, they ride through the eastern gates of, or the eastern portal of the heavens to enter into the dimension of the earth. He sets his feet upon Mount of Olives. He transforms it into Mount Sayawan. Alahayam Yahweh sets up his temple. HaMashayach, he sits in the temple to eat bread before Yahweh. There's a reason why he's doing that. He's doing that because he is connecting the two kingdoms together to make them one. All right? After he has made them one, now he is ready to leave the temple with the 12 tribes of Yashrael riding on white horses to go out to Har Magadan to defeat and destroy the beasts and their entities. This is what it's all about. Putting these pieces together to see how all of this is going to play out. All right, let's move on. So when it says here, he and his saints, we're talking about the 12 tribes. He came through the heavenly gate, the eastern heavenly gate with his southern kingdom. Then he's going to leave his earthly eastern gate of the tabernacle, of the temple, with his 12 tribes, the saints. We have to see that these books of prophecies are like puzzle pieces that have to be fitted together for us to see the big picture. Some of the imagery is straightforward, but much of it is written poetically and symbolically too, and even like a parable, where we are in need of Ruach HaKadosh to give us revelation and understanding. You see, that's why people then will look at Yawaal, the book of Joel, chapter 3, and because it talks about the valley of Yehoshaphat, they will think it's another war. Just like they talk about Psalm 83 is a war, right? They have it all confused because without Ruach HaKadosh giving us the revelation and the understanding, you're going to be led astray from the truth. All right? This war in Har Magadan will be fought by the sword in the mouth of HaMashayach. His power will be no match for these wicked entities. When HaMashayach and the southern kingdom return to the earth through the heavenly eastern gate to rest upon Mount of Olives, transforming it into the Mount Sayawan, it will be at this time that the two kingdoms will be reunited as one kingdom, under one Malak, one king. It will be HaMashayach, Malakano, our king, riding out of the eastern gate of his temple with his 12 tribes of Yashrael, riding on white horses, wearing the garments of fine white linen, riding as his righteous saints and soon to be bride. Also know this, that once the tabernacle is established upon the newly formed Mount Sayawan in our city Yerushalayim, that the Gentiles will no longer be allowed within her gates. The righteous Gentiles will worship always only from the outside. He's not allowing Gentiles in his gate, within his gates. Just like the Lawai, when we had the temple, the tabernacle in the wilderness, only the priests were able to go in to the holy place, and the high priest can go into the holy place and the most holy, and the holy of holies. We had the courtyard where, yes, our people were to bring their offerings. All right. But, and I remember that when Yawachanan measured the temple, the outer court was given to the Gentiles to tread it, to trample upon it. Remember that? Well, now he's saying that he will not allow them in his temple anymore. They're not to come in. They bring their offerings. We, the children of Yashraal, will be the ones to bring their offerings on their behalf. They can come into the country, but they can't come in to Yerushalayim. That's in verse 17. So shall you know that I am Yahweh, Allah Hayakam, dwelling in where? Sayawan. Sayawan is the new mountain formed from the Mount of Olives. In where? In Yerushalayim. In what province? In the province of Yahweh. So Sayawan is called his holy mountain. And then Yerushalayim, his city, this is the city of the king, will be holy. And there shall no strangers pass through her anymore. He's not allowing any more Gentiles in his city. Yes, when they receive their inheritance, it will not be amongst us. No, they're not going to receive their inheritance amongst us. All right? How that's going to play out, maybe later on he'll show me and then I'll tell you. But this is what the word is saying. This is what his prophecy is saying. He's not allowing them, even though they're going to become his people, but they will not be allowed in his temple anymore. They had a chance and they trodden his temple mercilessly. And because we are going to be the priest on the earth, we're the ones that will serve Allah Hayam. And we will serve him on their behalf. And I know there's a scripture that talks about when we have strangers amongst us and they're circumcised, they become as one who's born in the land. All right? He's not disputing that, but this has to do with worship. They bring their offering, but we take it in to the city and in to his tabernacle, into his temple. They worship from afar. Let me say something to you. You think all the angels in heaven are allowed in the presence of Allah Hayam? You think so? You think all of them can stand before him? You think all of them have the permission to come before him? No. There are some angels that have never come before him. He created them, but he created them all with a specific purpose. Some of them are worshipers in his presence, and then there's some that are not. All right. So this is him dealing with his own angels. So imagine the inhabitants on the earth. He's going to have that same order, right? He's going to have a government system set up. His son being the king, then he's going to have Dawad, who is going to be like the governor or the prince. Then he's going to have his elders and what have you. I don't have the full details just yet. I just have some of it. But this is how it's going to be. There's going to be an order. All right? And because there's no more sin nature, no one's going to be jealous over what another person has or can do and they can't do it. That sin nature is gone. We're just happy that we're living in eternity now. We're just happy to be in his presence. And yes, he's going to know every single one of us by our name. And worship is going to be sweet no matter where he established us. So this is not to make anyone feel bad and because everyone will be treated well. We will all be treated well because it's going to be a beautiful, glorious time to be living in perfect harmony with him. Okay. All right, that's the ending. Maybe I'll come back to this a little bit more. I think maybe but by the time we reach chapter 21 and 22, we may touch on this a little bit more. Maybe by that time, he's going to give me even more information. We'll see. I just go by what he gives me. All right. So now we're going to do the blessing for Yashraal because we've come to the ending of this part 3. I believe, yes, this is part 3. So we're going to look at the Barayam chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. The book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa Yachana. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak shalom. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And I also want to include as well that command that he's given to us, and it's taken from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 6. The Barayam chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, sorry. The Barayam chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Shama'o Yashwa'al Yahweh Allah Hayana Yahweh Achad wa Ahabath Ath Yahweh Allah Hayak Bakal Babak wa Bakal Napashat wa Bakal Ma'adak. And that is, Hear, O Yashwa'al Yahweh Allah Hayana. Yahweh, our Allah Hayam, is one Yahweh. And you shall love Yahweh, Allah Hayam, your Allah Hayam, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Now these words, they ought to be kept on our hearts and on our minds from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, when we leave our homes, when we return. Okay? And with that, I say, Shalom, Shalom. All praises to the Most High. Abba Yah.